Now, I'm sure you recall how newly christened New York Times columnist, well, she's the editorial board, not a columnist, Sarah Jeong. She was called out across social media for her tweets that are pretty impossible to read as anything other than just hateful, awful racism. She's called for the extermination of white people. She compared white men to having opinions to dogs urinating on fire hydrants, and she gleefully bragged about going out of her way to be cruel to older white men. And it wasn't just, white guys that she hates. She also doesn't like police officers. She said horrible things about police officers, accusing police officers of just going out and just raping people. And I mean, I'm not even kidding you. I read actually some of these tweets of hers on my radio program today to underscore the point of what the New York Times did by installing her on their editorial board. Now, in response to the criticism of these tweets, the press circled the wagons around Jeong. The New York Times stood behind her, and Jeong claimed that it was all satire. Now, given how she got there, is it any surprise that some people might have an issue with the fact that she has thus far not proven exactly why she should be greeted with open arms, even by the staff that she'll be working with, who, by the way, they were not safe nor exempt from her caustic hatred in the past 6 years on Twitter. She actually went after a number of them as well. Now, apparently asking this question is somehow worse than anything that Sarah Jeong has ever said, ever, as a New York Times feature writer and now editorial board member. Elizabeth Williamson learned this the hard way. Now, in response to a navel-gazing column by Bret Stephens, who issued a call to give Jeong a chance and tried to act as though he was above the rage mobs that he once so gleefully participated in when it concerned ABC and Roseanne Barr, Williamson had tweeted this. She said, "Here's Bret Stephens, NYT, offering a classy welcome to a colleague who has yet to prove she deserves one." I actually thought that was a very classy, very snarky classy, very civil way of kind of highlighting Jeong's treatment of fellow staff, because remember, she went off on people like Williamson and other current columnists at the New York Times. But apparently somebody didn't like that, because not long after Williamson tweeted this, she deleted the tweet and then issued what seemed like a forced apology, saying, quote, "I just deleted my earlier tweet about this column. It was inappropriate. I apologize." It's pretty unreal irony. I mean, this person is forced to delete a pretty calm tweet, questioning whether or not a racist person has shown themselves to be worthy of a second chance and a warm welcome, and she has to delete it. But Sarah Jeong could post and leave her tweets up for years, calling for the extermination of white people, saying that cops rape people, and the paper stands behind her? I mean, I'm not sure what else we should expect at this point from the New York Times editorial page. I mean, this is a paper that prints opinions such as, I don't know, quote, "Keep up the blanket coverage of Trump, it hurts him." Which, by the way, I have to ask, how did that blanket coverage theory work out for you guys in 2016 when you were struggling so hard to prevent the now president from winning? The New York Times doesn't ever learn. I mean, this is a newspaper that had an insane reaction when I made a very clearly worded video lamenting press bias and condemning media malpractice and promising to fisk the New York Times, which is apparently a fun phrase that the old people of the New York Times had never heard or understood before. And they actually responded by what? Interpreting it and as a threat, painting themselves as victims and trying to incite an internet rage mob against me because I simply said that free people have a right and an obligation to hold accountable their free press. So because of that reaction, I am just not really persuaded to extend benefit of the doubt to the New York Times or the courtesy thereof either. We'll see how this works out for them in the future, but I dare say I still think and I still encourage them to put Sarah Jeong's tweets on their masthead just to let everyone in America know who they really are.